This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
I was a little bit more pausy with that one. The one, the only, Brandon Swanson. I was a little bit more energetic because we just got done with week 2, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Week 2 in the NFL is done.
I can't believe it. I feel like
in college football.
When I was saying week 3 picks, earlier today, it's like, wow, week 3 already. We're kind of flying through.
And I said NFL. That's because before we started recording, we were talking about something totally different than what we were talking about. Welcome in to the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything college football, college basketball. Here on Most Valuable Podcast, we are going to be talking about some jam-packed topics, getting you guys ready for now week numero tres of the college season. But before I get into that, a little bit of house cleaning for you guys. If you guys have not already, click the link in the description. Check out patreon.com/most valuable podcast. Help support the channel to make sure that we can make better, more entertaining, and just more things that we can do. Help support the channel by checking out Patreon down below. We got some great rewards for you guys, some extra things for our patrons down below in the comment section, or in the description, I should say. But now let's get into it. We're talking about a threesome with picks at the end for week 3. We're going to look at the big matchup this week between number 3 and number 5. That's what it was last year. But yeah, number 3 and number 14 in the nation, Clemson and Louisville going at it this week. We're also going to look at Baker Mayfield and this past week's win over the Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to look at Josh Rosen and kind of answer the question, is he the most talented quarterback in the nation this year? And then we will end the show by making our week 3 picks for the top 25 teams in the nation. But Brandon, let's start with our first topic on the docket. Clemson, big win this past week against Auburn. Kelly Bryant gets injured, but comes back in. I'll excuse a little bit of non-muting the computer there.
I wasn't sure if it was muted already, and then I saw a video pop up, and I hit the mute button just to be safe, but it was already on mute.
You and Johnny are big kind of... What do I want to say? What's the word I'm looking? Not idiots, but that works too with the mute button. I do it sometimes too. But Clemson, big win. Kelly Bryant got injured, came out, came back. But the defense, 11 sacks on Jarrett Stidham. Clemson was able to get the win over Auburn. Louisville, it looked like they were going to get an upset loss against North Carolina. Also, one of the North Carolina players coming into last week's game said, yeah, you know what, Lamar Action Jackson, not going to do anything against us.
Yeah, we'll stop him.
He only had 6 touchdowns, I believe 3 through the air, 3 on the ground, en route to another victory. So I want to get right into it. I want to ask you this, Brandon, to start off this discussion with Clemson and Louisville. Will Lamar Action Jackson get it done against Clemson this week? Because so far in Lamar Jackson's career, he's technically played against Clemson twice. I say technically because 2 years ago, he did play in the game, but he only threw 1 pass, completed that pass. That's all he played in that loss. So I really don't associate him with that. Last year, though, 27 of 44, 295 through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, 162 on the ground, and 2 touchdowns en route to a close 42-36 loss to Clemson. There was one where they could have had it on 4th down. Clemson held them late in the game to seal that victory. I'm going to ask you, though, does Lamar Action Jackson get it done this year against the Tigers?
I'm not thinking so. Clemson's defense is pretty good, and that's even after the guys that they lost in the offseason. Jarrett Stidham was held to 79 yards through the air. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of good things going for the Auburn Tigers the other night. They hold Cameron Petway, very good running back, on 22 carries, only 74 yards. There was really nothing going for the Auburn Tigers, and that is all because of that Clemson defense. Clemson really didn't have a whole lot going offensively either. For them to only score 14 points after just coming out and routing, who was it they played week 1? Kent State, I believe, and just absolutely blasted them with, I think, like 5 different running backs getting a touchdown. So Auburn's defense held pretty good as well, but I just don't think that we're going to see we're not going to see 6 touchdowns by Lamar Jackson come Saturday against Clemson. I just don't see that happening. There's a level that Lamar Jackson has where people will have to say, you're just going to have to try and contain him. Because it's kind of like when you come into a week of fantasy football and you've got guys saying, I'm playing against Tom Brady. Well, you just look to hopefully contain him. Hopefully he'll only throw for 1 touchdown or 2 or whatever it is. But that's kind of, I think, where Clemson's defense is. We've got to just hold him. We've got to hold him. If he scores 2 touchdowns, okay, that's it. We've done our job because he has the ability to score a whole lot more and to go wild and break free and do it with his legs and do it through the air. So if they're able to hold him down to stats of 150 passing, a touchdown or 2, you've held him. You've really held him down. But if he's able to get 300 yards on you, if he's able to score 3-4 touchdowns, that's going to be a tough day for Clemson. But what I've seen so far out of this Clemson Tiger defense doesn't have me predicting that Lamar Jackson's going to be able to do all that well against them because they're just so locked down. They're very, very good, and especially what we've seen so far this season. And I know people can say Kent State was Kent State, and they're right, but Auburn is Auburn, and Jarrett Stidham is a good quarterback, and Cameron Petway is a good running back, and they really had some weapons there for Auburn, and those weapons were kept in the shed.
Our title's a little bit deceiving because, and the way I say deceiving is, of course, everyone's going to be focused on the matchup that you said. Lamar Action Jackson against the mighty defense of the Clemson Tigers. Like, just from this past week, they had the ACC Players of the Week. There are 4 of them from here. Quarterback, Lamar Action Jackson. 525 total yards this past week, 6 touchdowns. Wide receiver, Jalen Smith, Louisville, 9 receptions, 183 yards, and a touchdown. Defensively, defensive line, Austin Bryant from Clemson, tied a school record with 4 sacks in the 11-sack game against Jarrett Stidham. Then linebacker, they had Dorian O'Daniel, who had 14 total tackles and 1.5 sacks on his own. That's going to be the matchup that we look for. The Louisville offense led by Lamar Jackson against the Clemson defense. And I think that matchup is going to play out similar to what it did last year. Lamar Action Jackson gets in the end zone, maybe 1 more touchdown on the ground compared to his feet, or on the ground compared to the air because he can move around. Maybe he throws a pick in this one because we know how Lamar Jackson gets against good defenses. He usually throws at least 1 INT. But the big thing to me, and this is what the game is going to come down to, is the Clemson offense against the Louisville defense, because both of those units for the respective teams, that's where I have my question mark. Because if I look to last year's game, there were 2 positions on offense that to me helped solidify the win. Yes, Louisville had a chance to either win or tie the game late in last year's game. That 4th down that didn't happen, they thought they had it, they didn't. They lost the game. But when you've got Deshaun Watson who goes out there, and yeah, I know he threw 3 picks, but when he goes out there and throws 5 touchdowns, and you have a guy like Wayne Gallman who gets 1 on the ground and 110 yards on his own, that's going to help you guys win the game no matter who you are playing, even though Watson threw 3 interceptions. So far this year, I'm not convinced Kelly Bryant is going, because he's not Deshaun Watson, and I'm not convinced that he has that type of performance in him. Even in the Kent State game, they won 56-3, and he only had 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Deshaun Watson would have at least blew him out by halftime before he got taken out of that game. Whereas against Auburn, 14-6. And I know what you're saying. Auburn is still Auburn, no matter how badly that offensive line played against that front 7 of the Clemson Tigers. But that is my real big question mark, is Kelly Bryant in the offense for the Tigers, because so far against good opponents, Kent State is Kent State. That's why I'm not looking at that one, you should score 56 against Kent State if you are Kelly Bryant and the Tigers, but only 14 against Auburn. However, I'm not going to be a Louisville apologist here. So far in their games this year, they've played Purdue, which to me you should have blew them out, and a team like North Carolina who lost their top quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky this past season. You give up 28 and 35 points respectively. So that to me is the matchup that we got to look at in this game. Whichever one wins that matchup will help their team and push the needle more onto their side.
Yeah, I think another thing for Clemson, when you talk about this Clemson offense, it's Kelly Bryant, Hunter Renfrow, and then who? And then who? Because at the running back position, you can clearly see just when you're looking at the box score,
Kelly Bryant.
The next best guy running the football who got the second most carries was Adam Choice. He carried the ball 7 times for 17 yards. Next best, Tavian Feaster, 3 carries for 15 yards. And then it just goes down from there. So you didn't have anybody running the football outside of Kelly Bryant. And now a lot of people will say, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people will say, but a lot of people also come in and say, well, Jalen Hurts runs the football a whole lot for Alabama. But then so does Damian Harris. So does Bo Scarborough. So do the guys like that. But who else is going to help in that position? And then from Clemson in the receiving game, how much more can Hunter Renfrow do for you? Because he's a big possession receiver. You know, is he going to be able to try and get down the field, get into the end zone, and make some plays like he did against Alabama's defense in the championship game last year?
He's also a guy on 3rd and short. They can slip out into that screen and just hit him for a first.
He is totally your guy. I think he's probably the best receiver on this team and the most trusted receiver on this team right now for Kelly Bryant. So what is he going to be able to do to make to be able to make some big plays come Saturday when they're playing a very good team in Louisville?
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with just some of the things I was noticing with the stats when you were saying them, Feaster, who you said, I believe, was the 3rd highest rusher in that last game?
Yeah.
Overall this season, 9 carries, 84 yards. He's number 2 on the team right behind Kelly Bryant. He is number 2 with 9 carries. Right behind him is Trevor Anteni, who has 8 carries, 81 yards. So it's really Kelly Bryant's your main guy running the ball with the most carries, the most yards. He doesn't get the highest average, but he's a quarterback. I don't expect him to, unless you're Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick and you're going to do it all yourself. But he also leads the team in rushing touchdowns with 3. I wonder with this offense, is this going to be a game where the question pops up of Kelly Bryant cannot be expected to do it all? Someone from especially the rushing game. Because, I mean, the wide receiver core, they have Renfrow, but they also have Ray McLeod, who has 105 yards on the season, but he doesn't have a touchdown, which really needs to change if Clemson wants to score more points. I think this rushing attack is going to need to be there to not just get yards and say, hey, we need a running back, but if you can get a run game going, keep this Louisville defense on the field, tire them out, keep Lamar off the field. Because if Lamar Action Jackson is on the sideline, he can't hurt you.
Exactly.
Can't hurt you if he's standing next to the coach.
No, you're definitely right. My biggest thing is I know that we're only going to be in week 3, but how far are we going to get before we're talking about, okay, well, you know, who's going to step up here in the Clemson running game? You know, I'm not trying to sound the alarm right now, but they don't have anybody else so far who has stepped up in that position. They're going to need to find somebody to step up in that position because of the pure fact of what you said, where Kelly Bryant can't do it all. He can't do it all. And, you know, you can say, well, Lamar Jackson does it all. Well, if you look, they also had another guy on that team who carried the ball for 149 yards. So it wasn't just Lamar Jackson. Yes, he had a great day through the air and on the ground.
But they have a running back they
also had another guy who went out there and did better than what Jackson did. So there has got to be something for Clemson that shows up outside of Kelly Bryant in the run game. Otherwise, that alone could be a reason why Clemson could lose that game, is because if Kelly Bryant, let's say, cannot get anything going through the air, then you have to turn to the running game. And if you don't have anything going through the running game, and I know we're kind of taking one game, so we're kind of doing a cherry pick on this one of the one game that Clemson plays against Auburn. After week 1, they have, like 5 guys score a touchdown on the ground. But this is all we have to work with so far for this year.
Whereas for Louisville, you can take their first one because Purdue, you expected them to be a Kent State, but they proved to be a little bit more than Kent State. I almost said Penn State, which would have been totally different than Kent State.
Exactly, but you don't want to have that be the reason why you lose against Louisville because you didn't have a solid run game. But right now for Clemson, we haven't seen anybody. Now after a good game is in the books, there's no one there. There was no one there that stepped up. And again, Kelly Bryant, 19 carries. Next best, Adam Choice, 7. That says something.
And the thing I'm looking at right now, and you can take this however you want, and whenever people throw out stats, usually you throw out stats to win your argument. I'm just throwing this out, and you guys make your own conclusion on this. When we look at the rushing defensive stats this year for Louisville, they are second in the nation, right behind LSU by about 2.5 yards per game. They've only given up 34 yards per game against opposing run games. However, the devil's advocate here, and this is the thing that I throw in there, is they have also only faced the 13th most carries. They've only had 44 attempts against them. Average yard of attempt, 1.5. So you can look at that and go, that 1.5, by the way, is tied for second, 0.1 behind Michigan, who has a 0.1 or a 1.4. You can take that however you want. You can look at that and say Louisville's rushing defense is really good. That front seven is good. That's why teams can't run on them. Or you can go ahead and look at it like I am, and I look at it and go, well, North Carolina had 6 carries for Brown, and Carter only had 8 carries. That, to me, is not a big enough workload to get a guy going. And then you look at Purdue, and they had their top guy only had 8 carries. 8, 4, and 5 their top guys had in the carry department. So I look at it and I go, maybe that is a reason why, but if Clemson doesn't have that guy they can give it to consistently, that could be a problem for them in this game, especially if that leads to 3 and outs. Renfro, let's say Louisville packages a double team on third downs with him, so you can't just slip them out, and you get a lot of 3 and outs, and give Lamar Action Jackson the ball. The more times he touches it, the higher chance he's going to make you pay and could have a 6 touchdown game.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is that is there a plan behind Kelly Bryant for me at the running back position? Again, because Louisville can play a little defense of their own, but I think that obviously the one that we are looking for is that defense of Clemson. That's the one that we expect is going to come up. That's going to come up and that's going to make some big plays. I am interested to see how they will run the football, but at the same time, I'm very, very interested for that defensive matchup against Lamar Jackson and how they'll be able to really get him out of his rhythm, keep him off his game, because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I think is going to be the winner for Clemson. If they're able to get the win, it's going to be because of their defense. It won't be because of anything else. It will be because they played a very good defensive game and they held down Jackson. And
I'm not expecting in this one a kind of stifling performance from either side, especially from the Clemson side, because I look at last year, besides the pick and maybe on that last drive making him come out of the pocket to throw to a receiver where that running back had to try to run for that first down, to me, last year, Clemson didn't do a lot where it's like, wow, you really stifled Lamar Jackson. He still got 3 touchdowns in the game. The big reason why you were able, in my mind, to overcome that is your quarterback threw 5 touchdowns. Yeah, I know he threw 3 picks, but Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns in that game and proved why he was a national championship caliber quarterback. Here's the question I want to ask you, and this is what I'm kind of leaning towards here at the end of this segment. We get this game early this year, very early. And this kind of goes on top of what we talked about last week with Florida State. Didn't get to see them play this week because of Hurricane Irma. We will not get to see them play again this week as the Miami-Florida State game is postponed. That's why I'm going to ask you this question. Louisville gets Florida State October 21st. Clemson gets them a little bit later, November 11th, Dave Oster's birthday weekend. Remember that one. Is this going to be, will we look back at this game and say, this was the this division of the ACC, this was their division championship right here, third week of the season?
Clemson's?
Both of them, Clemson or Louisville. Because of what we talked about last week with Florida State, now that Francois is out, maybe I know we got to see what Blackman does, but they're now really the third favorite behind Louisville and Clemson.
It's a huge game. I mean, that's without a doubt. But I don't know, because it's so early and there's still so much season to be played. There's still so many things that could and will happen.
You think Boston College is going to get one?
You got me. You got me. It's hard to say that this is the be all end all game.
Yeah.
It really is, because of what I had just mentioned. You know, there's going to be other big games. There's going to be other games that we're going, okay, this is going to be one of those kind of cupcake walk in the parks. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, they're like Louisville last year. They're struggling against, who was it, Virginia? It's like, who would have thunk? We thought they're going to come in, blow out Virginia, everything's going to be good.
They needed a late touchdown in that one. They
needed to wake up late in that one, and they did, thankfully for them. But it's just, it's again, one of those where you can't count something too early, because you can have a big game really early and think, okay, this is it. That was the big game that they needed, blah, blah, blah. But then you can also have a game that you don't think is going to mean a whole lot, and neither does that team, which is why they overlook them, come out slow. The other team gets up, and all of a sudden, boom. And if you lose that game, that big game early in the season, it meant nothing.
No, and this is a huge game, and I think looking into my future, like my crystal ball.
Yes.
When we get to the end of the year, we could look back at this game and say, in retrospect, this was the division championship. But the most important thing this game holds in importance is whichever team wins this game, I believe, is going to get a huge ton of momentum confidence-wise. Because if Louisville wins this game, they're going to be like, we could win the ACC. The power is ours.
Yeah.
Like Captain Planet would always say, the power is yours. That's what Louisville will be thinking. If Clemson gets a big win here, this could kind of catapult this offense into, yes, we are the Clemson Tigers. We're going back to the college football playoff. Whichever team wins is going to get that confidence, because I look at last year and Clemson wins the game October 1st. Louisville still, Duke, they play well. NC State, they play well. That Virginia game, like you said, they needed to wake up in that one. Blow out Boston College and Wake Forest before they lose to Houston. By that time, they were done. After they lost to Clemson, they still looked at it and said, hey, Clemson could still lose to the Seminoles. We are still in this. But then once they lost to Houston, I kind of got this vibe of like, well, fuck it, the season's over. And then they lost to Kentucky to end the year. Then they get blown out by LSU in their bowl game. It wasn't a good way to end the season. That Houston game is what I think could happen in this one for the winner. They could gain confidence and move forward, and whoever wins this could have the confidence to kind of roll through their schedule, where the loser might be sitting there asking a few more questions that they didn't have. But we are almost going to run out of time on the camera, so this is where I'm going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know down below, what are you thinking about this game? How does Kelly Bryant play? How do you think Lamar Jackson, the Heisman candidate yet again after last week's performance? I mean, 6 touchdowns. You got to throw it out there.
Ricky already crowned him. After last week's performance, Ricky crowned him, and I'm still holding true to my bold prediction because I got to hold on to that one.
I did. Back-to-back Heismans, it would be great. But let us know what you guys think about this game down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into our next topic. And before we get into it, and I kind of prep the topic like I do usually, we're going to start with, we're talking about Baker Mayfield. And what Oklahoma's win over Ohio State says about Baker Mayfield. But before we get into that, I'm going to turn it to you because I believe that you have a certain something to say to all the Buckeye fans, me included, because I defended Ohio State, and they could still make the playoffs with one loss, but this is a pretty bad loss. I believe you have something to say to the entire Buckeye Nation that ragged on you when we did their preview this offseason.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't have much more to say than other than I'm right. And I was right, and I will continue to be right. And the reason I say that is because this is a different Oklahoma team as I believed it would be, and I wasn't sure if they were going to win the Big 12 just because I am very high on the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, but this Oklahoma team is good, and this Ohio State team is just not as good as they may have been a year ago. Now, J.T. Barrett, don't get me wrong, he's a very good quarterback. He has shown it in all of his, what feels like 6 years at Ohio State. He's like that Perry, I can't think of his first name right now, who played for Kansas, and he never left. It felt like he was there for 10 years. Well, he looked like he had been there for 10 years, but it's one of those things where Oklahoma, they're a very, very good team. Ohio State, also a very good team. But Oklahoma came to play in this one. They came to play in this one. And when you've got Baker Mayfield, 27-35, 386 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then you go out and you plant that Oklahoma flag right in the middle of the field of Ohio State's field, and then you come out and then you apologize. Don't you apologize for having emotion take hold and going out there and doing something that you couldn't do last year and having just a great game and feeling like, you know what, boys, we got this, we played well, let's celebrate. I like it a lot.
Which is funny because one of the headlines here on ESPN for one of their videos is Ryan Russillo said that he believed that Mayfield intended to disrespect Ohio State, especially with that. And that's what I thought of when you were like, no, don't apologize for it. Go ahead and do it. But let's get more onto the game, more so. And with this, we're going to focus more on the Oklahoma side because obviously the winner moved. Like Ohio State, they still have a chance. They win the Big Ten. All of this could be forgotten. We've seen one-loss teams get into the playoff before. However, this was a big win for the Oklahoma Sooners, more so because I will even say I was in the camp. I still am because I don't think they will win the Big 12. My favorite right now, because I don't think Texas is going to do it, is I would have to pick Oklahoma State. They would be my number 2 team to win the Big 12 in my preseason because I believe I had Texas winning the Big 12 this year. I know I was wrong. Laugh at me. But this Oklahoma team, this is one of the things where we see articles now. Yes, they're national title contenders. There's one that I'm looking at here that I kind of wanted to bring up to you where Paul Feinbaum on ESPN compared Baker Mayfield's style of play this past week to a Johnny Manziel. Uh-oh. And, I mean, that's the first thought you say, like, uh-oh, because he went on to the NFL, and, of course, his was a completely different problem that derailed his career, but I mean, 386 yards, 3 touchdowns, no INTs in the game. Didn't do as much on the ground as Manziel would have done, but played a near perfect game against Ohio State. I know they started out slow in the first half, but really woke up in the second, scoring 28 points in the third and fourth quarters. With this win, what do you think this means for Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma moving forward this year?
Well, what I want to say is last year the score was Ohio State 45 and Oklahoma 24. This made Ohio State 3-0. That put Oklahoma at 1-2. There were their 2 losses. But now the interesting thing is Baker Mayfield, a tremendous game on Saturday. But what I want to talk about is something that we don't talk about too much on this show. It's the defense that a Big 12 team played on Saturday night. You held a very good Ohio State team to 16 points when a year before they had 45. JT Barrett threw for 4 touchdowns last season against Oklahoma. He threw for 0 this year and then threw an interception. On the ground, J.K. Dobbins was the only guy really getting anything going outside of, Barrett, who had 66 yards, 72 and a touchdown from Dobbins. And last year they were torched on the ground. Weber had 123. Curtis Samuel had 98 and a touchdown.
Who's now in the NFL.
Who's now in the NFL. This defense deserves a lot of credit. This Oklahoma defense deserves a ton of credit because they were able to hold down a potent offense, a very potent offense, and Ohio State couldn't figure them out. It was really something for me great to watch because I'm high on Oklahoma. Ohio State, I just didn't feel like they were the team that was, going to have a perfect season. I didn't feel like they were the same team that they had last year. And clearly they're not, but they weren't going to be as good as that team. The 2 running backs they had and lost now due to graduation, tough losses. And I thought, though, too, that it would be interesting to see how Oklahoma would play because of the losses that they had at running back, at wide receiver. But you still have Baker Mayfield. And because of that fact, you still have a chance to win every single game. And Baker Mayfield clearly showed that on Saturday night.
Well, and the key thing that I was listening to an interview that Mayfield did, I believe, after the game, and he talked about like last year, and he made it sound like this one was circled on the calendar. Like we remember it from last year, they were out for revenge in a way, and the way he kind of talked, I was like, I know like this is going to sound dumb to say, but I was like, he's the leader of this team. And I know you hear that and you go, well, Ricky, duh. Would you get hit in the head with a shovel? You didn't know that beforehand? But just the way he talked, I'm like, if he has this attitude the entire season, they can go undefeated. That's what I feel now with this Oklahoma team. And just to kind of carry that into the next level of they think about if they're going into this game thinking about that, the rest of this season, they have to be thinking last year when it came to the college football playoff, them, just like Penn State, snubbed, didn't get in last year, but then Baker Mayfield knows because he was there when they made it for 2016 as the number 4 team, they basically got spanked by Deshaun Watson and the Clemson Tigers. Like that game, like those were the worst semifinal games to watch. I remember watching both of them on New Year's Eve. The worst games to watch. Clemson blew them out 37-17. Alabama completely shut out Connor Cook and that Michigan State Spartan team. And then they don't make it the next year. There's that little bit of redemption that Oklahoma wants to win the Big 12, which they will have their Big 12 conference championship game again this year. But just hearing him say a little bit of that just for this game made me think of that in a bigger picture of like, you know what? This team behind closed doors probably has that. It kind of reminds me of the Fad Five for Michigan way back. I know it's basketball, but that like, we gonna shock the world. That's what I think Oklahoma's mindset is going to be this year. Not necessarily shock the world because we know they're good, but hey, you know what? Everyone picked against us. Like he even said for this game, 80% of people picked against us, and we proved them wrong. That's what this season is going to be because I'm assuming that we are not in the minority that have have Oklahoma outside of our top 4, our playoff prediction coming into this year. I mean, I didn't have them in. You had Oklahoma State in over them. So that's why I feel like this game catapulting them, and this whole season's basically going to be the revenge tour for the Sooners to try to get back to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think, again, winning this game for Oklahoma, it means so much because I think a lot of people have probably penciled that in already as a loss for them. And then, okay, they can only have one more loss. Where's that going to come from? And that's a big thing for them to be able to win this game, especially for somebody like me who has Oklahoma State beating Oklahoma later on in this season. So that's huge. I mean, that's absolutely huge. And I think a lot of people would say, well, it'd be very difficult for two teams from one conference, one Power 5 to get in. I mean, I've done it.
Hey, people think that Ohio State and Penn State should have got in last year.
Yeah. So Oklahoma. This is, for me. This win is bigger for Oklahoma than the loss is for Ohio State. Why? Because it's Ohio State. They could go off now and they could win every last one of their games for the rest of the season. They're still going to be considered a playoff team. Let's be honest. It's Ohio State. They could go out, lose one more game, and people will still want to put them in the college football playoff because it's Ohio State. Well, so I think the win is much bigger for Oklahoma than the loss is for the Buckeyes.
Well, and I mean, I'm looking at their schedule now, looking forward, and based off of in the preseason, take those thoughts that I had, throw them out the window because now we've got to see most teams play 2 games. Tulane should be an easy non-conference win for them, but the conference is where really I'm looking at. Based off of, we didn't know what to expect from Baylor. We've seen them in 2 games, lost to a 35-point underdog in Liberty, lost this weekend to the Roadrunners from University Texas San Antonio. You're garbage, Baylor. Get out of here. Sooners going to beat you. Iowa State, which I know they lost this week, but I did want to say, did I not say the Iowa State game was going to be a close one?
You did.
Probably a 3-point game. It's always a close one. Oklahoma should get that win. Texas, without how they played, I know they blew out San Jose State. David Fales was crying.
Was that the game that you called an upset and you picked San Jose State?
No, I did not.
Was that the game? Are you sure?
I did not. It was.
Are you sure?
No, it was East Carolina. I picked East Carolina over West Virginia. That was my upset special.
Was it? I thought you had picked them over. Who did they play again? Who did Texas play again?
San Jose State. That's what I said. David Fales was crying.
I really thought that you had picked them. So I'm I'm watching that game and I'm like, man, Ricky's a dumbass.
Go back and play the tape. I picked my upset special was the East Carolina State against West Virginia. Didn't end up well because West Virginia, I believe, blew them out in that game. The 3 opponents that I think now can pose trouble for Oklahoma, but when I say trouble, use air quotes. Kansas State, however, we haven't seen them go up against a Power 5 team. We'll get that this upcoming week, I believe, in Vanderbilt. Oklahoma State, that could be a top 5 matchup with how late it is and where the rankings go. And then TCU this year has been a good team. I mean, This past week, blowing out the SEC team in the Arkansas Razor Pigs. They're not even Razorbacks. They're Razor Pigs after this. Kind of putting the spit on the hog and just rotating it around that fire is what the Horned Frogs did. Usually, I know in Louisville, Louisiana, that you're eating frogs. They had themselves a nice succulent roast pig this past weekend at Texas Christian. So those are the teams where those 3 games, maybe they get upset. But, I mean, after this game, you got to be high on Oklahoma only because of what they were able to do. And I'm going to ask you this question because, I mean, now there's even, you look at ESPN, you look at the videos, and there's even videos now from, College Football Live where it's they're absolutely a college football favorite. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're not a national championship team to me. Alabama still has a spot because they haven't lost 2 games this year. They could still lose once, and I'll put Alabama in my playoff, maybe most likely my national championship. And the Trojans still haven't lost yet. The Trojans haven't lost yet. The Huskies haven't lost yet. There are other teams that I would put. Clemson hasn't lost yet, but I'm not as high on Clemson this year as some others are. There are other teams that I would still put in that national title over Oklahoma.
Well, and thank goodness Sam Darnold looked a little bit better this week than he did in week 1. That week 1 was a little let's shake the rust off. But thankfully, he was able to look pretty darn good against the Stanford Cardinals.
Who did not, this was their first big game, because I know they blew out Rice in their first one, their first big game without Christian McCaffrey. So that was a huge loss that they were dealing with. But Oklahoma, I'll ask you this. Are they, after this, are they an absolute college football favorite for you? And two, can you look at the side of people that say they are a national championship contender and look at them seriously in the face and go, okay, yeah, I buy what you're trying to sell me. I don't buy it completely because I'm not buying it, but I at least get your sales pitch and I get what you're trying to sell me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll listen to the sales pitch all day if you're talking about Oklahoma, and the reason I'll do that is because I would have listened to it last year when they were 10-2 and people didn't put them in there, and I think that they should have been a college football playoff team because of the way they finished. Not the way they started, 1-2, but because the way they finished. Would have done the same thing with Penn State because, again, how they finished. And I think that the only reason why I will struggle to put them in right now is because I am still, again, as I've mentioned, so high on Oklahoma State and think that Oklahoma State will be the team that ultimately bounces over Oklahoma to be in that college football playoff.
Last thing I want to ask you, and I saved this to the end because I wanted most of the segment to be about the Oklahoma State Sooners and Baker Mayfield, but I want to look at the other side for a little bit in Ohio State, the fan base that you made fun of at the beginning. Not made fun of, but you basically proved them wrong because you were right.
Well, I didn't do it. I didn't go out and play the game.
But you rubbed it in their face a little bit, as you should, because you were on top. I will admit, faux pas on me. I picked Ohio State to win this one.
But I also want to say, as much as I'm not even kiddingly. I mean, I was correct, but Ohio. This doesn't. It's like, and you'll have to watch my show. This week.
That's what I think with
Brandon Swanson.
Wednesdays,
check it
2
out.
p.m. Central Time,
and 12 Pacific and 3 Eastern. It's like when the Patriots played the Chiefs, and something's wrong with the Patriots. They suck. They're terrible.
Or everyone coming into the game.
And just the day before, they were saying, Patriots, they're going 16-0, right? They're going 16-0.
Or 15-1.
And no one's giving the Patriots no one's giving the Chiefs the credit they deserve. And everyone's saying, what the hell's wrong with these Patriots? We also can't say that there's all these things wrong with Ohio State and not give Oklahoma the credit that they deserve for beating a very good team. So yes, Ohio State lost,
but don't take anything away from Oklahoma. Is what you're saying.
Don't take it away from Oklahoma, but also remember that this Buckeye team is a good Buckeye team.
And I'm not trying to take anything away. The thing that I look at in this game is think back to a week ago. We asked ourselves where it was like, you know what? Ohio State didn't look like themselves until like late in that game against Indiana. And I came out and said, no, they have the weapons, they have the defense. It's just shaking off the rust. They eventually got it. They'll get it going. In this game, though, what was wrong with J.T. Barrett? Only 183 yards, 5 on the average per completion. No touchdowns, interception, a QBR of 21. I'm not a great quarterback, but Brandon, I believe I can roll out of bed and maybe get a 21 QBR. I think on a good, on an A+ day, I think I can get a 21 QBR. I think I can do that, maybe even exceed a 21 QBR. He just didn't look good in this game. And that's not good for a team that you need a quarterback like him. Because it's really like Paul Feinbaum said about him. It's like, this is the final shot. Like, we've seen this in the past. You've been benched in the past for other guys. There's no one here to take your job. It's you. What is this going to mean when they go and play the Michigans and the Penn States this year?
Yeah, and if Michigan continues to look the way they have defensively, it's not going to be too pretty for J.T. Barrett if he can't get it figured out. Again, it's one thing to look. It's one thing to go out and look really, really, really good against the Kent States of the world, like Clemson. But when you have to come and then go up against an Oklahoma Sooner team again, I've bashed on the Big 12 every chance I can because they don't have a good defenses typically. They came up with a really good defense on Saturday, only allowing Ohio State, a very high-flying offense, 16 points. You don't want to see that too often if you're Urban Meyer. You don't want to see that. And JT Barrett certainly has to get things turned around and corrected because the schedule will be kind of easy for a couple of weeks, but then you've got Penn State, and then you're going to end the season with Michigan, and it could come down to that Michigan game being super critical, especially if you beat Penn State. If you beat Penn State and then you still only have one loss, it comes down to you're going to have 2 losses or you're going to still only have that one. And people love you and Raiders love you so much more if you only have that one loss. If you have 2, they can make the case for you. But if you have 1, it's like, they only have 1. It's to a good team. Because most people can probably assume that Oklahoma is going to be right around there too at the end of the season. But Barrett's really, really, really got to turn it around in a hurry. Less than 200 yards, no touchdowns through the air, and a pick. Not the game he was looking for. Last
year, and this is what I'll kind of end on it as my stat to look back on. Last year, there were only 2 games all year, where this Ohio State team, and I know they had different weapons, guys like Curtis Samuel are not there this year, but there were only 2 games where they scored under 20 points. The win at Michigan State, where they won 17-16, and the shutout loss to Clemson in the college football playoff. Only times they scored sub 20 points. And looking at JT Barrett's stats, there were only, want to go with, 4 games where he had no touchdowns. No touchdowns in the 48-3 win over Tulsa. Didn't need him in that one. He also had no touchdowns in the 24-20 win over Northwestern. Also had no touchdowns in the double overtime win against Michigan, and 0 touchdowns, 2 picks in the loss to Clemson. So this isn't something that we haven't seen from Barrett before, but really to me, he was the Achilles heel for that team, for this Ohio State team in this game. But I want to turn it on to you guys. What do you guys think? First off, what the main segment was, which is Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield. What does this win do for Mayfield and Oklahoma moving forward? And then also about Ohio State. What does this say for Ohio State, JT Barrett, Urban Meyer, everybody? It's not a death sentence by any means.
No,
you can still get into the college football playoff with 1 loss, but now you got to beat Penn State. You got to beat Michigan. You can't lose to one of them. So let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into our, I'm going to say final topic, because the last thing we do on the podcast now is pick the top 25 games of the week for the top 25 teams. And the last discussion that we're having here on the podcast has to do kind of with the NFL draft here early in the college football season. And really this has been, we've already talked about, you guys can check it out on the channel. We've already had the discussion during the offseason about this will be the year of the quarterback. Darnold, Rosen, Lamar Action Jackson, Josh Allen was on the list. You've got Luke Falk with the Washington State Cougars. Told you they were going to get that win over Boise State, Brandon. I told you they were going to beat them.
I'm so upset about that. I am honestly so upset about that. I picked them for the upset, and, Boise State should have won. All I'm saying is they should have won.
Baker Mayfield, Mason Rudolph there. I finished my points, but the quarterback I want to view and kind of microscope right now in this segment is Josh Rosen, because I saw on ESPN they were talking about Rosen. Chip Kelly was talking about him, and I want to ask the same question they asked, and I will ask it to you, just plain and simple. Is Josh Rosen the most talented quarterback in the nation this year? Is he the most talented one in the nation?
Well, if you had to just ask me that, which you just did, through 2 weeks of the season, I'd have to say he looks pretty damn good. He has over 800 passing yards already, 9 touchdowns, and 0 picks. 0 picks. He threw for 491 yards and 4 touchdowns in that comeback against Texas A&M Week 1.
And came back, like you said, and won the game.
Yes, and he did it all without throwing a pick. 35 of 59, he almost threw the ball 60 times. About his last pass, he almost threw his arm with it. But, I mean, absolutely incredible. I know Week 2 is Hawaii, and it's Hawaii. But he has been very, very good. He has not been the guy. However, I did not think that this would be the guy that we were talking about at this point in the season. Very, very early. We're just going to be going into Week 3. I really thought we'd be talking about where Sam Darnold left off and coming in. Darnold hasn't looked terrible, but he hasn't looked what he was at the end of last season. But Josh Rosen, we talked about it, Ricky. Is he going to be able to kind of wake up, get back to form, shake the injury bug, and get things going? And so far, Josh Rosen has done just that.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing for me through these these 2 games is what you said. 9 touchdowns, no INTs. And this is a guy who, coming into this year, remember when we kind of ranked our top 5 quarterbacks on our draft big board? And I was like, well, you know what? Number 1, I'm going to have Darnold there. Number 2, I'm going to have Josh Allen. And then I'm like, number 3, I'll probably right now put Lamar Action Jackson. Number 4, I'll put Josh Rosen, with 5 being most likely Baker Mayfield or Mason Rudolph. Like I even said, I'm like, depends on who I'm feeling better about that particular day. Josh Rosen, to me, if you said to yourself, you know what, I would take Josh Rosen with the number 1 overall pick, I would say, I can't blame you for that. I mean, me personally, let's be honest, although he had a less than stellar game against Western Michigan, I'm still taking Darnold all day, every day with my number 1 pick. Yeah. However, the thing that I think this now plays into, and this is the quarterback big board rankings, I want to say we're only through 2 weeks of the season. There is a long year left to go. But this is the time where we get to overreact about things, and we get to make a big deal out of nothing usually with this season. If he continues this play, continues limiting his interceptions, having big rating games, throwing multiple touchdowns in games, I think that he could be the second quarterback off the board. More importantly, because like we talked about last week, which quarterback who was second on the board coming into the year didn't have that good of a game against Iowa with Josh Allen. And this is something that to me is most impressive about Josh Rosen. Was one of the big question marks coming in was how is he going to respond to after being injured last season with the shoulder injury? It looks like he hasn't missed a step. Looks like he hasn't missed a step, and this is the Josh Rosen that we were expecting to see last year through 2 games.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And I think the fact that he has looked so good, and you wouldn't have even thought that he was injured last year, that's really, really good. Because there's some guys who they come back from injury, they have a whole off season, and they're still kind of timid. There's been no timid with Josh Rosen, and that's been really, really big. I think that goes to show he's fully healthy. That's huge, because if that's the case, that makes everything else on the offense run smoothly. The running game, the receiving game, confidence with the receivers, everything goes really, really well. And even though the defense didn't play well Week 1, the offense picked them up. And if they're able to do that throughout the rest of the season, it may be one hell of a matchup between Los Angeles and Southern California.
And we're going to have to wait until November 18th for that one. I know you're talking about the Trojans and the Bruins later this year. That one's on the road at USC. But, I mean, the thing I was going to look at is just even the next 2 or 3 games. Like, this week they get Memphis at Memphis. And not to spoil any of my picks, but I expect a big game out of Rosen again in this one. He's playing Memphis. I mean, if you can put up 5 against Hawaii and even 4 against Texas A&M, he's going to have a big game against Memphis as well. To me, the big one, though, the big question is, can he keep this going and have this kind of a performance? Let's say he does have it this weekend, just for the sake of argument, has another 4 or 5 touchdown game against Memphis. Does he keep the momentum going in the 4th game, September 23rd against Stanford at Stanford?
Well, it's going to be a tough game because it's at Stanford, but we saw what USC was able to do against them.
A quality a high caliber quarterback in Sam Darnold, I'll say.
I think that if Rosen stays on the path that he's going right now, why not? Why not say that he's going to go in there and have a good game? Who's to say that he's not? Because right now, no one's stopping him. Right now, no one can stop him. He is just taking teams to task. So if he plays the same way this week...
Taking teams to task. I like that one.
I mean, he is.
Hashtag taking teams to task.
If he does the same thing at Memphis, I have no question in my mind that he can't do the same thing on the road at Stanford.
Well, and I mean, the thing I look at, and I don't mean to compare Darnold and Rosen like this, but if they play well, they're going to be linked in conversations. We're just going to do it. But 21 of 26, 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 INTs. I can see a similar stat line for Rosen minus 2 things. Do you know what I'm minusing from the stat line? INTs. I think he has a similar stat line, but just doesn't throw the interceptions that Darnold threw in the game against the Trojans. And looking forward at the rest of the schedule, it's going to be interesting how he plays this year because Colorado should be a big game. Arizona, I'm still unsure about. Oregon, they're winning me over. They got a big win last week against Nebraska. Washington will be huge. You've got Utah, which is huge. They won the Holy War this week against BYU. And then, of course, you got the game against USC. And, I mean, the big question, this is more the prediction side of it now, is can he keep it up the entire year? And I think there will be a fall off. And when I say fall off, I don't mean like, boo, he's off the cliff and we never hear from Josh Rosen again. And I know what you're thinking, Brandon. I can't replicate that sound effect for you. That was a one-time thing. That was a one-time.
I really liked it.
That was a one-time. If you ask me to do it again, I'm not going to be able to do it as good as I did. But there will be mistakes. He will throw an interception here. He might have a game where he throws 2 picks in a game, and it's like, wow, Rosen didn't really have a good game. But overall, if he can kind of keep this season as a high-caliber season, we might be having the conversation when we move these conversations over to the onside kick to where we might have the conversation of, okay, Darnold's number 1. Like, okay, scratch that. 2 conversations. We, might be having the conversation, well, you know what? Darnold's number 1, but is Rosen number 2? Or we could be having the conversation just like we had with Winston and Mariota of who you going number 1, Rosen or Darnold? And the thing that's more impressive now, these 2 guys are in the same conference. Same conference. It's not like Mariota and Winston who were on opposite sides of the US of A. No, these 2 guys in the Pac-12 and will play each other just like Mariota and Winston did in the college football playoff. Yeah,
I think that, it's really an interesting thing to think about. But at the same time, when you said that he might fall off a little bit. If he has a game where he throws an interception or a couple of interceptions, that can't be the end of it. And that's also kind of how we have to think about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had a really kind of tough week 1, and then he still threw a couple of interceptions week 2, but he got the win. We can't be saying, well, he throws interceptions, so that's going to open the door for somebody else to come in who hasn't thrown any interceptions. Well, you played Hawaii, which don't get too excited that you didn't throw any picks. But in the game against Texas A&M, I think that's the game that's bigger for me. And you had such a big comeback. Texas A&M's defense didn't help, but I think that what I'm saying is that just because Darnold has had a couple of games with a couple of picks and then game 1 where he was pretty shaky, we can't be knocking him off the pedestal saying, you know what, this guy's been perfect so far, so let's put him in the spot. Not saying, too, that Rosen isn't very good because I think we are seeing the Josh Rosen that we thought we were going to see last year, but it was cut short due to injury. If he can continue to stay at this pace, which it may come down a little bit, it may only be 3 touchdowns, but
he might actually throw a pick.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That might be a shocker.
You're never going to have a season where you go through and you don't throw an interception.
Unless you're Tom Brady. Didn't Tom Brady do that, or did he? I believe he had one season where he went clean all the way through, didn't he?
I don't know. I can't remember. That's way back there.
He had a really good season where he only threw, I think, 1 pick. I'm gonna fact check myself while you continue to talk.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that we cannot just knock somebody because they've thrown a couple of interceptions and then crown someone because they've been absolutely perfect through the first 2 weeks.
You want to crown his ass? Crown his ass.
Oh, rest in peace.
Good old Denny Green.
But I do think that there's very good reason to shoot him up, you know, a theoretical draft board. You were always and always have been kind of high on Josh Allen.
Yeah,
I haven't really been there with him. Well, you know, he hasn't been the same kind of flashy feeling. I haven't gotten that same feeling as you have. But then again, you really jump out of the gate if a guy just, you know, catches a touchdown. You're like, I like him. No, he's going to be my 4th pick.
The thing with Allen that I liked was I kind of had him pegged as kind of like a Carson Wentz-esque player or a Joe Flacco-esque player. And the thing I mean by that is small-time school could, under the right coach, do good things in the NFL. Like Josh Allen is going to be a project. He's not a guy that, like Sam Darnold, he's the guy in my mind you draft, and it's like he's the future. However, the thing that scares me about that, and it's nothing against Sam, I think I called him Scott 2 seconds ago. I'm sorry, Sam Darnold. But the thing, and it's nothing against Sam, is how many times have we drafted a USC quarterback very highly? Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez. I don't think he was drafted highly, but John David Booty was also drafted.
John David Booty.
He was on my Minnesota Vikings. Like, how many USC quarterbacks have we seen besides Carson Palmer that have actually done anything in the NFL for long term? And I'm looking at it right now, and the interception that he threw, 0 interceptions. It was last year he threw 2. Last year Tom Brady only threw 2 INTs. That's what I was thinking of. He threw 2 last year, and then 2010 was the 36-4 season. So that's what I was really thinking about. It wasn't 0. But if Rosen goes all the way through with 0 interceptions, that would be impressive. I don't even know if someone in college football has ever done that as the starter of the team. But I want to ask you one thing to kind of put a kibosh on this. Is I know it's from August 16th, but there were quotes from Jim Mora, who was asked about Rosen and the draft. And here's what he said August 16th. He said, "My firm belief is that he will not leave. I don't think he'll leave. I want a disclaimer. I have an opinion, or I have an option to change my opinion. But as we sit here right now, I can really honestly say I don't think he's going to leave." Brandon, I'm going to ask you. I'm putting you. You've been Ed Orgeron before. You do a great Ed Orgeron impression. But now I am putting you in the shoes of Jim Mora. 2 games into the year, are you going to hit the button and say, I am taking the option to change my opinion? I think he may leave at the end of the year, especially if he keeps this kind of performance up.
Well, Jim Mora and Josh Rosen, I think, have a very, very close relationship. I think a very close relationship in terms of, you know, even father-son style. So I think he probably has a pretty good idea of where his quarterback is. And if his quarterback is having as much fun as I'm sure he probably is to start this season, you know, maybe he does have a pulse on whether or not he thinks he'll stay or leave. And maybe right now it does seem to be one of those, you know, I think he will stay. But at the same time, there comes a time when if he keeps up the performance that he's been having and at the pace he's been having it, and I know we're only into week 3, but this is why you and I have these wonderful positions, because we get to talk about this, is you start to get agents. You start to get money involved, and you start to get agents saying, hey, you had this outstanding season. You go now to the NFL because we don't want you missing out on any money, which is going to help you be comfortable, help a family be comfortable one day, a wife, kids. You start to grow up really, really fast and have to make very, very, very important yet life-changing decisions very quickly as well. So that all comes into play. But right now, for him to say, I think that he will stay, I don't think that's too far off because of how much fun I'm sure Rosen is having. And especially with the guys, there's something that comes to that too.
The inflatable pool in the dorm. Remember that picture?
That's hilarious to me. I still don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Just shows he's having fun.
I think that if that's kind of the way where you're at right now, that's also important. And if you're there, if that's the spot you're at with the guys on your team and everything, you may not want to leave.
This is going to be a very different. This is going to shock some people that know my opinion. Usually, I am a firm believer of stay in school, get the degree. If you can get the degree a year early, great. But I feel like with Rosen, if he continues to go on the track he is now, just take that. If you're number 1, number 2 in the draft, take that cash money and run with it. And the thing I think back to, and this is what I would not want to happen to Josh Rosen. I'm going to read you 2 stat lines for the year. And after these 2 stat lines, I want you to kind of tell me who I'm talking about here. This was a quarterback, a Californian quarterback, who one year had 3,528 yards, a completion percentage of 69.1, 39 touchdowns, 7 INTs, a rating of 161.2. The next year, he had a completion percentage of 36.6, 3,237 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 INTs, 157.6 was the rating. He was a top pick, would have been a top pick the first year, wasn't a top pick that next year. Do you remember who I am talking about? He was drafted in the 2013 draft in the 4th round by the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a quarterback for your team last year in the NFL.
Nick Foles.
Not Nick Foles.
No. Chase Daniel.
No, USC quarterback. He is now with the 49ers. Dave used to call him Sparkle Barkles. Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley was that his junior year, people were like, phenomenal season, gonna be a high pick. Decided to stay for that senior year. And looking at the stats, they're not horrendous compared to the year before. However, if you remember that season, that senior season was not a good one for USC and Matt Barkley, where they lost a couple of games more than they did the year before, goes in the 4th round, doesn't get enough money. So that's where it's a shocking position for me, because usually I'm like, stay in school and get the degree. But in this case, get the cash money, especially if you're going to be the number 1 or number 2 draft pick. But I'm going to ask you, any final thoughts, anything that you think we missed talking about Rosen today?
I think we got it.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below in the comment section. What do you guys think? Will Rosen keep up this kind of success all year? If he's going to break down in a game, what game do you think that will be? And how surprised are you that Josh Rosen is having the early success through 2 weeks that he is having right now? Let us know down below in the comment section. But Brandon, we're going to end the podcast like we always do. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, this is at the end like it is every week. If you're on YouTube, hey guys, I can see you guys. You're seeing this the day 1 that this comes out, so that you guys have enough day to watch these.
I just have to say something that I think is so funny. You said, hey, yeah, I can see you guys. You can't see them.
Yeah, I can. I see Rex sitting there. I see Ben sitting there. Ben sitting there in his blue t-shirt that he's wearing. I can literally see him through the lens. It's a magic camera we got here, Brandon. Wingardium Leviosa. That's what we are. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa, right? Is that the line?
You got it.
Did I say it wrong?
No, I think you got it right.
Because you're the Harry Potter expert here in the room.
Yeah, I think you got it right.
But we're picking the top 25. So how it works, I know a lot of people had complaints last week. If the game contains someone in the top 25, we're picking that game. So some of them might be clunkers like Michigan Air Force. We're still going to pick it because we're going through top 25 teams. And the first game, before we pick the first game, I have a comment, and it's Rex Smith, who I mentioned just a second ago, says, let Ricky start picking Illinois games just to keep it interesting. You know he really wants to. Well, this Friday, we get the Fighting Illini 2-0 going up against Charlie Strong and the number 22 South Florida Bulls. Sound the alarms. We go an upset special here, Fighting Illini with the 3-point win in South Florida.
Well, no need for alarms with me.
Tampa.
I'm going to keep it pretty simple. South Florida will get the win over an Illini team that, hey, 2 wins for them. That's a good way to start the season, but it'll be 2-1.
Yeah, we're getting the win. We're going 3-0 to start this year before we get demolished in conference play like it usually happens. But the next game is that game I mentioned, number 7 Michigan hosting Air Force. Both teams undefeated on the year, but this is one you got to go with the Wolverines. I don't think Air Force has enough to beat Harbaugh and Du Bois.
Gotta love our United States Air Force, but they're going to probably be better out in battle and combat than they will on the football field. Michigan will get the win.
Next game, we've got your team that you talked about earlier, the team you are high on in the Big 12, number 9 Oklahoma State, the Cowboys, going up against the team I believed I picked to upset Penn State. I believe I picked them to upset Penn State. I'll have to go back and check the record.
You did not last week.
I thought I did.
You did not.
I thought I did.
That dumb.
I thought I was. Usually I am. I got to go back and see. But we've got Pitt hosting Oklahoma State. I think this is another easy game. Cowboys with the road win.
Yeah, I think that Oklahoma State's going to get the win. But let's not forget, Pitt just lost a tough game to Penn State. And then Franklin says it was like playing Akron. You just got called Akron. So they're going to be pissed. But I think that...
I don't even know why you need to make that comment if you're James Franklin.
I think that
why? Why do you need to make it?
Oklahoma State goes in, gets the win.
Well, I'll ask you, do you think he needed to make that comment? I don't think he needed to.
No, he didn't. But what he was doing, he was adding fuel to the fire to reinvigorate the Pitt and Penn State rivalry, and he did just that.
Well, the next game, we talked about this quarterback in the last segment. We've got Josh Rosen and the UCLA Bruins, number 25. They are ranked this week, going on the road to Memphis, Tennessee to play the Memphis Tigers. Got to go with the Bruins in this one. I think Rosen will have a little step down. No, not a step down. I'm going to say 4 touchdowns, no INTs, 326 yards through the air.
Well, I was also going to say I think it's another 4-touchdown day. I wasn't thinking 320 on the dot.
I almost said 3 touchdowns, but then I went back up to 4.
He'll go up. He'll get 4 touchdowns. It'll be another no interception day for Rosen, and he's going to just keep rolling on the road to Memphis.
And next game we've got, here's one that could be an upset, but I don't think it'll happen. We've got number 10 Wisconsin going on the road to play the BYU Cougars. Are you going to be bold? I'm not. I'm picking the Badgers. But are you going to be bold and pick the Cougs over the Badgers?
Absolutely not. Wisconsin's going to roll.
Then coming up next, this is a team I picked last week because I thought they'd get the upset special. But Virginia Tech going on the road, number 16 going on the road to play East Carolina. East Carolina has not looked good this year. I believe that my second favorite team in Virginia Tech gets the win under their star quarterback. Hasn't been as hot as Josh Rosen, but Josh Jackson has been doing a great job for the Hokies. He gets enough done and then some for the Hokies to beat East Carolina.
Yeah, give me Virginia Tech in this one. There's no chance for East Carolina.
Another easy game. That's the only thing I hate about the first 3 weeks before we start getting into conference play. SMU, I know they're 2-0. TCU, though, coming into this one ranked 20th, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, they got an impressive win to me over the Arkansas Razorbacks this next week. I think this is another game at home where, these guys, this TCU team kind of starts building more confidence. They go to 3-0, looking forward into Big 12 conference play.
Yeah, give me TCU at home in this one. I think that they'll come up with a big win.
And now the big game. The big game only because you know how I feel, Brandon. Like the last podcast we had, we recorded the podcast while the Tennessee-Georgia Tech game was going on. And Georgia Tech was up. And I threw a little jab at Tennessee, and I made fun of them. But then I said, knowing my luck, Tennessee will come back and get lucky and win the game in the end. That's exactly what happened. Tennessee going into Florida, 23-24 in Gainesville. I'm going to let you pick this one first. Who do you have winning this important SEC East matchup?
Florida needs this game badly. They cannot have 2 losses within the first 3 weeks. Game 2 got canceled. They need this win. They'll get it at home.
I am going to go Florida as well. There was no shocker here. There's no way I was picking the Vols in this one. And a big reason, those guys who were suspended, A, they're getting them back. B, they're going to be pissed off. Expect a huge game from Antonio Callaway as the Florida Gators get the win over the Tennessee Vols. Then an interesting one, Mercer against number 15 Auburn, only because Auburn coming into this one, they are going to be upset giving up 11 sacks to Clemson last week.
There's nothing interesting about this. They're playing Mercer.
They're going to win. They're going to be pissed off.
They're going to get a win. But you would say, now this is an interesting one.
It is.
Mercer and Auburn. I mean, this could be Ricky. I'm literally looking on ESPN as we go down. Mercer is so bad I can't even click on them to give me an explanation of what the school is about. I can't even do that. Don't even try to tell me that this is an interesting game. Auburn is going to smoke them out of town.
They are.
It's an easy one. Nothing interesting about it. Auburn gets the win.
Mercer so far has played Jacksonville. They won 48-7. And this past week, they lost to number 10, a team that we in the past have gotten wrong for saying I'm probably going to say it wrong again, Wofford, whatever it is. They lost to them 27-28. So they are 1-1 on the season. I say interesting only because Auburn's going to be pissed off after giving up 11 sacks. I didn't say it's going to be interesting because Mercer's going to get the win. Now, if this was basketball, remember Mercer against Duke a couple years ago, they could ball out and they could dance. However, Auburn gets the win in this one. Then another interesting one, only because they're coming off of a loss. We've got 2-0 Army going up against Ohio State. Who you got?
You've got another team that's going to be really pissed off. Ohio State is
really pissed off.
Ohio State's going to roll and get the win in this one, but I really would like to see, JT Barrett, how does he play in this one? Because he doesn't need to play exceptionally well for them to get the win. But Are you disrespecting Army? Are you disrespecting the Army team that week 1 beat Fordham 64-6? Are you disrespecting the Army Knights? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
Buckeyes get the win. I'm not going that bold. I'll tiptoe the ledge, but I won't go that bold. Then we have the Pac-12 matchup. 21 Washington State should have been 1-1, but they're 2-0. Thank God, because I picked them last week. Hosting the Oregon State Beavers. Are you going against the Cougs again?
I badly want to. And screw you, Boise State, for not being able to hold a lead. What the hell? But I'm going to go Washington State in this one.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting because we've got 2 quarterbacks that aren't near the top, but they're 2 quarterbacks that can do some damage in this game. So far, you got Jake Luton, who we believed would have been the starter for the Beavers in the offseason. That was the podcast where you were actually in Florida. Sean filled in for you. He's got 674 yards, 4 touchdowns. You also have Luke Folk on the other side for Mike Leach's squad. I'm going to go with the Cougars, but I'm going to say it's a close one. I'm going to say it's a 7-point game, a lot closer than the line right now, which calls for Washington State as 21.5-point favorites. I think this is going to be a close one, but not enough for the upset. And then we've got Tulane and Oklahoma. Oklahoma now the number 2 team in the nation. Boomer Sooner all day. I think this is a blowout for the Sooners. 33.5-point favorites right now.
It is. Oklahoma gets the win, and maybe Baker Mayfield will go and put the flag right in the middle of the field again.
Nah, I don't think he does that. But talking about another blowout, another one, number 1 Alabama, Colorado State. Can you give me any chance that Colorado State wins this one?
No, there is no chance that Colorado State wins this one. Alabama all the way.
You know what I find interesting?
What's that?
Oklahoma against Tulane. Oklahoma 33.5-point favorites. Alabama, Colorado State. I know we're recording this on Monday. Right now, the line is at Alabama 28.5. I would think Alabama would be a higher odd than Oklahoma. Wouldn't you agree? I would think that Oklahoma would blow out Colorado State by more points than Oklahoma would blow out Tulane. That Alabama would score more points.
Yeah, I would say what you had first said to me was kind of confusing. Honestly, either way, I don't care. Both teams are going to win.
Brandon's like, I am not betting on either of these games because they will be blowouts and you won't win a lot of money. And going into the next one, SEC matchup, number 12 LSU on the road, Mississippi State. I am going to go with LSU. I almost wanted to pick the Bulldogs, but I'm going to go with the Tigers.
I'm going with the Bulldogs.
I almost wanted to.
Danny Etling has thrown just one touchdown pass this season.
I wanted to go with
Mississippi State at home. They're going to upset LSU.
I'm changing my mind. I'm going to go with Nick Fitzgerald. I'm going to go with my gut because my original gut said Nick Fitzgerald, Mississippi State. Yeah. But then I'm like, you know what? This LSU defense is good, and against the run, they're one of the best. They, like I mentioned earlier, they are the best yards per game against them, the lowest in the rushing attack. I am going to go, though, with Mississippi State. I'm changing my pick, going with my original one, going with the gut. I know it's big, but I'm going with it.
Yeah, that's why you're just not sure which side to go with.
It kind of shifts around.
I hear you. But this is an interesting game. This is
truly interesting. Not a Ricky interesting.
No. This is going to be a good game. LSU on the road at Mississippi State. LSU number 12. Mississippi State not even ranked. But this is just a huge game because it's inside the conference. SEC. It's going to be good.
Then we got two games to me that smell like blowouts. We've got Penn State, Georgia State. I'm going to go with Penn State. Georgia, Samford. Going to go with Georgia. How about you guys? And we're packaging these two together because I think they're going to be blowouts. Top 25 teams win.
Yeah, Penn State gets an easy victory. And yet again, like I said, I can't even click on Samford here. It's not unclickable. It won't even take me to the page. So Georgia gets that victory too.
If Pitt is Akron, what would Georgia State be?
If Pitt is Akron, what would Georgia State be?
Because I would assume Pitt is better than Georgia State.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Georgia State's Mercer.
I just don't get it. I don't. But then we've got a inter-conference, inter-power 5, 18 Kansas State from the Big 12, Vanderbilt SEC. The line is only having the Thundercats as a 4-point favorite. Who do you got, the Commodores or the Wildcats?
Kansas State. I got Kansas State winning this one on the road. I think that their defense will get it done.
I am going to go upset in this one. I'm going with the Commodores as they are going to win by 3 in this one. A late second field goal gets them the victory as time expires at home to beat the Thundercats in Nashville. You just like the storyline.
I do. I love it. I do. You just make this up as you go.
I won't just give you a winner. I'll give you a score and how they're going to win it. That is what I do here on the Primetime Podcast. But then we've got a big game, the biggest game of the week. Game day is going to be there. It's going to be on ABC, 7 o'clock Central Time. Number 3 Clemson going into Louisville at Papa John's Cardinal Stadium to play number 14 Louisville. You guys know who I'm picking. I'm going Lamar Action Jackson. The Cardinals getting the dub against the Tigers.
Hey, in this one, no Deshaun, no problem. Clemson's going to go in. Their defense is going to be able to hold down Lamar Jackson. There ain't going to be a whole lot of action going on.
I still think he gets at least 3.
He's going to get his, but they'll hold him. Clemson will be able to come in and get something done. I
think that this is going to be a big game, and this is going to be the most interesting. This is going to be the most entertaining game of the week, or so I hope for. I hope this is a huge, last-second team at the goal line, and one team makes a play to win it.
You want to kind of spell that out for us for this one? I mean, you have an idea of how it's going to go. How's it going to go?
I think what it's going to do is Louisville's going to be up 6 with 5 seconds to go. Clemson on the 10-yard line. Kelly Bryant will be looking for the end zone, batted away by the Cardinals to win it as time expires. It's going to be a defensive play for the Cardinals that wins this game for them in it.
Hell of a storyline. I like that one.
Then we've got the Trojans and the Longhorns in L.A. I like the Longhorns in the preseason. Yes, they beat San Jose State, but I like Sam Darnold a little bit more, and the Trojans are going to get more on a roll beating Tom Herman and the Longhorns.
I think USC is going to win this one pretty big because Texas's defense is still a long ways away. They're going to have a lot of points put up against them. If Maryland was able to do that to you in week 1, USC is going to pummel you here in week 3.
Well, and then the last two that we have, 6 Washington going up against Fresno State. I think this is another blowout victory and another blowout loss, I should say, for Fresno as they lost to Alabama last week. And then Stanford going on the road to play San Diego State. I think Stanford gets the win. Who you got in these last two?
2 easy ones, Washington, Stanford.
Yeah, and this is I kind of want to apologize because last week we got the comments of like, why don't you guys pick some interesting games? Well, besides a couple of them, there's a lot of, this is the part of the season, especially week 3, where teams go ahead and they schedule their cupcakes and they schedule teams. We're going to get into the meat of this in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to get some really good games as these teams get into conference season and get going and start playing each other. But that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast this week. I hope you enjoyed everything. Let us know down below in the comment section what you guys thought. Let us know on Twitter. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Brandon is at young_swan19. And also a little bit of house cleaning yet again here at the end. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. This is your way to help support the channel more so than watching, liking, subbing, and sharing our videos each and every week. We have rewards for you guys that you guys can get a exclusive Patreon podcast. You can be guests on our podcast each and every month. Check out that at patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. I want to thank you guys for watching and or listening today. Brandon and I will be back next week with the storylines following week 3 of action. Have some fun watching these games. I know Brandon and I will. And as always, have a good day, everybody.